Welcome to the Grow People podcast. David Stein, along with lead pastor of Revolution Church, Jason Gertis. We have been doing the podcast as part of the Abide cohort. So the Grow People podcast for the last few episodes has been the Abide cohort sessions 1 through 6.
Yep.
But today we're back in the studio with a very special guest. A longtime friend of Pastor Jason. They reconnected a couple of years ago. He had been in vocational ministry for over 45 years.
50 years.
50 years.
50 years. Just right now, 50 years of ministry.
Wow. Married for almost 50 years.
Yep. 47 years. So I got married when I was 8.
Yeah.
Sort of an arranged marriage thing, but seriously, I got married when I was 19 and Connie was 20. So yeah, we've been at this 47 years.
It's incredible. 2 kids, 4 grandchildren.
Yep.
Became a senior pastor when he was 23 years old.
That's right.
Wound up being an executive pastor and teaching pastor at a small church in Southern California called Saddleback. Was part of the global launch of 40 Days of Purpose with Rick Warren.
Yeah.
I have many questions about that. We'll get to that. For the last 19 years, he has been leading his own ministry called Replenish. Started out as soul care for pastors, but now it's soul care for anyone. And for the past couple of years, has been Pastor Jason, our pastor's mentor, leading him through soul care. So, number one, thank you very much. As I said last night when I met you, we are the recipients of what you are pouring into our pastor.
Thank you very much. I am so honored just to, be invited into his life and into he and Lindsay's world. And so it's a sacred privilege for me to do that.
And I haven't even gotten to his name yet.
I was going to say, we need to say that. Yeah.
If you were here for Abide Men's Night, you spoke so well about how men can be a blessing in today's world to their families, to their neighbors, to their workplaces. So thank you very much. Please welcome Lance Witt.
Thank you.
Yes.
It's great to be with you guys.
Yes.
How did you guys meet?
Do you want to tell the story?
Yeah, I can. I was actually a student pastor in Texas before, I came here in South Texas. And our church worked with Saddleback. There was a whole purpose-driven kind of network that Rick and Saddleback had created. And then the student version of that, or youth version of that, called Purpose-Driven Youth Ministry. So I was doing that with Doug Fields, and they had an idea one year for a conference. This is back when the makeover shows were super popular. So they decided to do a makeover for a youth room for one of the attenders that were coming. And my pastor was there kind of when that planning was going on out in Saddleback. And he said, you ought to contact my student guy. He's really good at, that kind of stuff. So I got involved with that whole makeover. We actually, in Waco, Texas, we called it Wakeover. This was long before Chip and Joanna Gaines, by the way.
Yes,
and so we were kind of the trendsetters.
So that wasn't even happening.
No, it wasn't even happening.
Waco was not cool back
No,
then.
it was not at all. So I was on that trip, and Lance's son was on that because he worked at Saddleback as well, and was doing a lot of the videography and all that, kind of documenting the whole thing. So I got to hang out with his son for about a week. So we got it's one of those you're together all day, all night, so we had a lot of fun times.
And you were how old?
I was mid-20s at that time, probably 27, I wouldn't be maybe late 20s, whatever. But so then through that and through Doug, and I began to I wanted to continue to grow. And I was like, Doug, I really need somebody to help me in these kind of areas, like personal things. And he's like, and at that time, I think Lance had just maybe left or was about to launch out onto his own. And Doug was like, you need to talk to Lance. So we talked, connected, began a process of mentorship. Well, then I moved here, and then we lost touch for 12 years, So when I was going to take my sabbatical in 23, I was like, I need to reach back out to that Lance guy. I really liked him. That was, so I, through a mutual friend, circled back, and then that's how we kind of picked back up from there.
The guy, Doug Fields, that you mentioned, we have mentioned his book on the Grow People podcast several times. It's been foundational in my life. It's called No, but it's not as foundational as what I believe some of your books are going to be, because you've written 3.
Yes,
and,
sir.
and I want to go deep into that today. But first, Saddleback in the heyday.
Yeah.
What was that like? Rick Warren had just come out with Purpose Driven Life. You're there. You're a teaching pastor. You're an executive pastor, and you just get, I would imagine, swept up in this global thing, because isn't that the second most published book in the world next to the Bible?
I believe so. Yeah. Probably just for a little piece of context, it'd probably be helpful to know, like, when I came to Saddleback, I had been a young pastor who had learned a lot from Rick Warren. So he was sort of this larger than life personality. And I had pastored small and medium-sized churches, and through a very surreal set of circumstances, ended up joining the staff. And I show up, the staff is larger than most of the churches I ever pastored. And so it's intimidating. I'm exhilarated and thrilled to be there. But also there's this little sense of I'm a poser. And like, if they find out who I am, and more importantly, like, who I'm not, like, I'm not this, amazing leader, like maybe they think I am, that if that ever comes to light, I am so hosed and in big trouble. And so it's into that sort of setting that I begin, and initially took on, I was the pastor of discipleship. Then I took on small groups. Then when Rick did write Purpose Driven Life and Purpose Driven Ministries really launched quite large, they asked me to step in and become the executive pastor over all the ministry side of the church. And that whole experience was such a game changer for Rick and our church, but also for our staff, because and I tell people, like, that season of my life was the most intoxicating and toxic all at the same time.
Wow. Because he had written already Purpose Driven Church.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so now in the early 2000s, this book is released. Now, did he come to you guys and say, hey, I'm releasing a new book. I don't know how it's going to go?
Well, Rick's a very confident, leader. And so he had been under contract to write this for several years and had made a couple of attempts to write it, but had never really got it across the finish line. And then in 2001, he really did. Like, he took 9 months. I think he only preached 5-6 times during that 9 months that he was out writing the book and finishing it. And I'll never forget that on his desk, there was this little saying from Oswald Chambers, and it says, "I hate writing, but I love having written." And that was Rick. Like, I think writing was sort of painful, but he also knew this was going to be sort of his signature message. And through the years, because of Purpose Driven Church, he built a lot of goodwill with pastors literally all over the world. And so when Purpose Driven Life came out, and then we did the campaign called 40 Days of Purpose, I think he knew that it was going to be effective, and there was a lot of goodwill for him to build on. He had no clue just how big the phenomenon would be. And like I was mentioning to some of you guys last night, when we launched the campaign in our church, which was a big deal in and of itself, Rick had the idea that we should invite churches who wanted to do it as part of the pilot phase. And so he did this sort of invitation to any church that would want to do it. Well, we had 1,500 churches sign up to do it 1 week behind us. So we were finishing, and we didn't have this all in the can. We were literally building it week by week. And then when that week was done, we were then getting everything ready to send out to these 1,500 churches. And so I still probably need therapy because of that little season in my life.
Well, we're here for soul care.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But eventually, you're leading 25,000 churches through this globally.
Yes. Yeah. And fortunately, they did a good job of building the Purpose Driven Ministries organization that then really became the arm that resourced that. Now, it was all created inside the church. And so we were still highly involved, but once after year one was over, there was a whole team that was really dedicated to making sure that those resources got out to those churches and they could do all the customer service. And we produced it in several languages. And so it was quite a thing.
Yeah.
Now, the timeline of Replenish Ministries that you founded in 2007, was that a product of the toxic side?
Yeah, I would describe it like this. So I think like most, young leaders and pastors, I was ambitious. I wanted to serve God. I was all in. I was committed. But I also didn't realize internally that I had some really broken places in me. Like I have a propensity to workaholism, being compulsively busy, not self-aware, not understanding how my family of origin impacted me. So I show up at Saddleback and I bring all that stuff with me. Now, in some ways it sort of served me well, but and sometimes in ministry, I will teach that some of the things that people will applaud you for and pat you on the back for are actually the very things that will wreck your soul. And so I'd always been patted on the back because of my workaholism, and it served me well in some ways, but it also ended up being soul crushing because I could not keep up. So coming to 2006, I just reached this season. I remember Connie and I having some very heartfelt conversations like, I don't know that I can keep on doing this any longer. And over about 6 months, we really wrestled. And Rick and I had 4 pretty lengthy conversations, one that included our wives. And long story short is we finally did make the decision to step away. And I would say it was a result of 2 things. Number one, and I want to own this, I was not leading myself well. The pace of my life was out of control. My schedule was absolute chaos. And again, I have to own, one of my favorite sayings comes from Henry Cloud, where he says, "You are ridiculously in charge of your life." And I was not taking ridiculous responsibility for my life. But also because of the success of Purpose-Driven Life, 40 Days of Purpose, Rick went from being an extremely well-known megachurch pastor to a global celebrity. And none of us knew how to fully navigate all of that. And so it created, some chaos in the culture. And so as a result of not leading myself well as some of the hard things going on inside the culture, made the decision that I had to step away. And now I can look back and tell, you guys, I wasn't really longing for a different way to do ministry. I was longing for a different way to do life. And I just knew, I wasn't sure what that looked like. I just knew I couldn't stay and continue to do what I was doing.
That is so good and a great jumping off point to get into some of this life planning and soul care. There are very few pastors that I've heard of that are called pastors of pastors. And that's how you've been described, and that's how Pastor Jason has described you to me, a pastor to him and a friend to him and a father to him. In 2007, when you started Replenish Ministries, were you aware of your need for soul care, or since you had a need for soul care, that others needed that?
Yeah. So after I left Saddleback, I think I was 46-ish at the time. And I remember just feeling quite lost. Like, at 46, we should know what our career path is. And here I was back at square one. And I had already been scheduled to speak at a conference in Singapore. And so I was flying across the Pacific by myself. It was middle of the night. Everybody on the plane was asleep, and I'm just wrestling with God. And David, I would tell you, I've had very few mystical experiences in my life, but this was one of those moments when I don't know how to tell you, but I know that God spoke to me so clearly. And I remember crying out to the Lord that night, God, what am I supposed to do in this season of my life? And I just heard so quickly and so clearly God say to me, I want you to help leaders be healthy, holy, and humble. And I remember thinking I don't have a clue what that looks like practically, but I think I could give my life to that. And so that was the early seeds of what then would become Replenish. And because when you rewind the clock 20 years ago, soul care and Sabbath and healthy rhythms wasn't talked about much, especially in the world of church, and especially big church. And so there were days when I had no clue what I was doing. And what I kept going back to is that very clear call that night over the Pacific. And that God was calling me to learn how to bring my own soul back to life, because I had lost so much in those years. And so I think Replenish comes out of very much my own story of in those early years. In fact, my first book, Replenish, I look back on it now and kind of chuckle, because I'm not sure I really had any business writing a book on it, because honestly, it was really more my questions than any answers I had. But I knew they were the right questions to be asking in that season of life. And so I would describe Replenish as I was trying to come alongside and help pastors and other leaders, and I was maybe a half a step ahead of them in my own journey.
It started for you as lead pastor. Now, Pastor Jason came here when he was 30 years old to be a lead pastor after being a student pastor in Texas. But you're a lead pastor at 23. So the next 20 years are a blur?
Yeah. Again, I say this laughingly, but somewhat sincere. I really should go back to all the people in that first church and find them and sit down and apologize to them for inflicting myself on them, because I came out of seminary young and arrogant and full of vision and ambition. And I thought we were going to grow a mega church in our rural town of 3,000 people. And, but they were gracious and they loved us well. But yeah, for 20 years, I was trying to do what I think most every pastor in the world was trying to do, and that is love Jesus and make a difference in my community and grow a great church and do something significant with my life. But often that ambition, now I can look back, I couldn't have even begun to articulate this then. A lot of that ambition was really about me. And I think my ambition was sidetracked. And again, I could wrap it in God language and God speak, but the truth is there was something in me that needed to be seen as successful, needed to be seen as, achieving something significant. And it hijacked my soul.
As you mentor our pastor, talk to me about some of the things that you say, hey, don't do this. I did this when I was 23. I did this when I was 33. I did this when I was 43. Don't do these things.
Wow. That's a long list.
Because we have a vision here to be a generational movement of gospel multiplication. We just celebrated our 20th anniversary last year. And Jason said, hey, I got another 20 years here and I'm playing the long game. Yeah. So how do you get our pastor to play the long game?
Well, I think one of the things I love about your pastor and my relationship with him is that he shows up, now coming up on 3 years ago, just very humble, very open, and you can tell it when a guy's got a bit of bravado or, kind of smacks of arrogance when they talk to you, or they're quick to tell you all their success stories. And one of the things I love about your pastor is I think he just shows up authentically wanting to be a follower of Jesus and to do life and ministry well. And so just the openness that he showed up with, I think, makes all the difference in the world. And then I feel like, because I've just been at this a long time and have a lot of years, like I just some things that I'm always saying to guys like Jason, like one of them is, and I remember hearing this first from my friend Pete Scazzaro when he talked about leading out of your marriage. And that, for a lot of us in ministry, we date our wives, we propose to our wives, we get married, we stand at the altar and go, man, I'm all in, I'm committed to you. And then we turn all of our ambition toward growing the church. And oh, by the way, I am married. Instead of like, what if we put our highest ambition and our best energy into having a great marriage and a great relationship, and that our marriage would be a sign and wonder of the gospel, and then that we would actually lead in our ministries out of the overflow of a killer marriage. And as the old guy at this table, I have, yes, but I still got you. I do have some regrets about, the way I did ministry in those early days. And I think even in my generation of leaders, you almost wore it as a badge of honor, that you sacrificed your marriage and your kids, and because you're doing it for Jesus. And so I find myself having a lot of conversations, not about pastors' small groups or their preaching calendar, although some of that comes up, but it's really around let's talk about your rhythms of life. Let's talk about your own personal pursuit of Jesus. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about, is Sabbath and rest really a value? What's really most important in guiding your decisions in your life? And so anyway, I just love getting to have those sort of life coaching conversations.
Well, we've been talking about rhythms here at Revolution for several years now, and I'm sure a lot of that came out of this mentoring relationship. Would you say that there was a moment where you could have called yourself, I burned out? That has led to this passion for soul care?
Yeah, I think some guys use the term burnout, and I've got some friends who I think use it maybe in the best way, which is they really did hit the wall. They depleted their serotonin and their adrenaline, and they crashed. I never fully crashed, but I was certainly on the path to that. And I think, in my years at Saddleback, I was living in an environment that no matter what you gave it, it always wanted and needed more. And so I don't look at my own life and like I have some friends, I go, no, they actually hit the wall. They burned out in the truest sense of the word. I would describe it more as I just got very unhealthy and I was living in an unhealthy way. So there's this one story I tell with some regularity, and I can still to this day, more than 20 years later, get a little emotional about it. But Connie was usually a pretty good sport about the pace of our lives. But every so often she would, just be fed up with kind of like how we were living. And we'd have one of those come to Jesus meetings. And by the way, she was Jesus in that conversation. Yeah. But she said, and we had this conversation many times, but it went like this, like, you're never here. Even when you're here, you're not really here. You work all the time. I don't get the time I need with you. The kids don't see you very much. Your head's always buried in your computer. You're on the phone all the time. And I remember I would always kind of have my typical responses like, babe, that's just how it is in ministry. Like, that's just what's required. And then I would use this phrase that she absolutely hated. I would say, but it's just for a season. And
no bigger lie.
No bigger lie. And I convinced myself, hey, when I get that next person hired, or we get through Easter or finish this campaign, like, it's going to get better. And I remember this one particular time with a lot of anger and hurt in her voice, tears in her eyes. She just said, there's always a reason or a season why you can't be who you're supposed to be. And man, just talk about feel like you were hit with a sledgehammer. And I knew she was right. Like, no one was holding a gun to my head. Mm-hmm. I was living the way I was living because of choices I made. Now, my choices might have had some other consequences, but in that moment, I knew like something had to change. Yeah. So it wasn't so much burnout as like just getting hit with the reality, like, Lance, if you keep going this way, the end is going to be disastrous.
And that's not just for people in ministry.
No, it's absolutely not.
Yeah. So
especially in this day.
Yeah. If you're listening right now, we're going to get into some of these principles and practices to avoid things like that. when Pastor Jason came back from his sabbatical, and there's a difference between the sabbatical and the preaching break.
Yeah.
The preaching break that you take every summer is for the purpose of?
Yeah, that's just me taking a break from preaching, but I'm going away for the sake of the church. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, so I can work on the church, not just in it all the time. But sabbatical is for me, working on myself.
When you came back in the summer of 2023, and I don't know if you use these words specifically, but to paraphrase, it was refreshing to his soul to spend time with you. So you reconvene after 12 years. Where did you pick up? What kind of questions were you asking Jason? How did you feel at that time?
Yeah, well, it's kind of funny, like listening to you talk now. It's not, I mean, I believe everything you're saying because obviously I believe you, but it's like, I don't know that guy he's talking about. You know what I mean? Like everything he's describing about himself, I'm like, oh, that's not Lance. But I say that as a way to say, like, I think that's how drastically his life changed and working on it. And, so I knew that, again, back then I trusted Doug, a lot of mutual friends, a lot of my, different pastor friends, we talk about Lance. And so before I got to that point, and a lot of mentors in my, prior to that, I was like, I got to go spend some time working on my life. And so he has a whole process of a life plan. So, and I appreciate what you said. When I showed up, it was like, I need to make sure, like, help me develop a roadmap now so I don't get to where that was, for him. Like, I can start to feel myself being headed there too, and so I don't want to do that. So really answering your question, like, there was a lot of questions he had. Like, there's a whole process of questions.
Yeah, I want to know what those are.
Yes, and I mean, obviously he can speak through that, but there was a lot of like very introspective questions he asked there. That again, talking about your childhood, your family of origin, that made me start to think, and to that, and Lindsay was with me and all that, and that's one of the things I really appreciate about Lance. The majority of time, I would say probably 90 to 95% of the times we talk, which is typically monthly, depending on the calendar, it's not about church. It's not about ministry as much as it is like me catching him up on my life and Lindsay and Lindsay knows, like I've given, and I asked Lance, like Lindsay has his number and email, she can call him at any time and be like, okay, I'm concerned about this with Jason. You need to talk to him about this. And so it's like at any time I could be quote unquote blindsided by Lance because Lindsay's already gotten to him,
This is really, really, really important. If you're listening right now, you want a church where the pastor has somebody that is like Lance, that speaks into his life, and you have several people that speak into your life. What you don't want is a lead pastor who has nobody speaking into their life.
Totally.
So what we're talking about here is so critical for everyone in our church. What question?
Can I say one thing to that?
Yeah.
I think my observation in ministry now for all these decades is that the higher people go up in leadership and the more significant their influence, the temptation and the tendency is to become actually more isolated, for people to put you up on a pedestal and for no one to tell you the truth. And so, I feel like for people like Jason and others who lead large organizations or businesses, I always say you don't need just a couple of people that you give permission to speak truth into your life, to hold you accountable. No, you need to get a couple of people who you grab them by the collar and you look them in the eye and you say to them, I want to give you the responsibility that if you see me being dishonest, if you see me exaggerating, if you see me mistreating my kids or my wife, like, you have not just permission, but I want you to feel a sense of authority and responsibility to come to me because there's too much at stake in my life to just let this thing go until I actually end up as a train wreck.
Wow, that's a huge difference between, hey, you have permission to speak into my life, and then grabbing them by the neck and saying, hey, I need you to look for these things and to speak truth to me.
Yeah, and that's why I mentioned Lindsay. Like, and those in our church know Lindsay is on staff here. She's around, and Lance has gotten to know her as well. Like, it's important for not just mentors, but your spouse to say that. Like Connie saying that to Lance was the catalytic moment in his life. And Lindsay, and I know Connie, she's a good Texas girl, and she's not afraid to speak her mind.
That's maybe the biggest understatement of this entire podcast.
Yeah. And Lindsay and her are very, it's funny. Lindsay and Connie actually know like a lot of people, like a lot of mutual friends. It was just funny when we were there. But yeah, that's important too. Like your spouse needs to know that they have that. And Lindsay does that. And that's where that's kind of what I wanted. I didn't want to just like on my sabbatical, there was a couple things I did without Lindsay, meeting with a counselor and different things and some different leadership stuff. But like with Lance, I wanted her there in the room. We're talking and he's asking these questions. And Lindsay would answer a lot of those questions. And a lot of times more honestly than me, but not because I was lying. I just wasn't aware. Yeah.
Well, I think when we talk about him coming and us doing this one life process that we've created, I think there's a principle here that really matters for everybody. And that is that it's important for you to regularly step back from all the whirlwind and noise of your life, to set aside time to really reflect on where's my life headed and where am I going? And am I really living according to the values that I say I possess? Yeah. I love Proverbs 14:8, where Solomon says, the wisdom of the prudent is to give thought to their ways, but the folly of fools is deception. And part of the beauty of them showing up and being in our basement and life plan room is for us to set aside. And I tell them this, I go, part of the secret sauce is rarely in your life are you ever going to set aside 2 full days to talk about everything in your world. For me to pepper you with questions, for us to poke around on your rhythm of life and your rule of life and, what really matters and how are you engaging your kids and what are your dreams for 5 years from now? And we do a deep dive. We go all the way back to people's family of origin and how that's impacted them. We have them tell their story. We talk about threads that run all the way through their story. We go to, their talents and how God wired them up, to what they really value, to creating a life purpose statement and a vision. And so it's a pretty significant process. But I think for me, part of the value is like, all of us need to learn how to be quiet and to reflect on our lives and to really be honest and ask like, hey, what's the trajectory of my life? If I play the movie forward, where am I 5 years from now? If I stay on the path I'm on, where am I going to end up?
What a great question.
Yeah.
So if somebody's listening right now and they're like, okay, this is fascinating. And, I'm at ground zero right now. So what would the first question you would ask somebody be? Was it the first question that you asked Jason? Well,
I think the first thing I would do with them probably is let's get an accurate picture of what is true right now in your life. And so we have this one tool called Reality Check that leads people through 6 questions. And what it's trying to do is get like an accurate picture of where they are in this particular moment. So we ask, and again, it's a holistic conversation. It's not just about your vocation. And a lot of times I get people in the room and they want to talk all vocation. I go, well, my job is to make sure we get to all of your different life spheres. So we ask like, hey, what's working right now? What's broken or stuck? What's lacking? What's unclear? What's concerning to you in your life right now? What needs more attention in your world? And usually it takes about 45 minutes. And we're not trying to solve anything in that moment. Right. All we're trying to do is just get really clear around what's true. Just that in itself could be a huge win for someone to sit down with those questions. And again, if you're married, I would encourage you like do the first run through those questions yourself, but then get your spouse to weigh in because you're going to find some things that they're going to say that maybe you didn't put on your sheet.
So when you and Lindsay were meeting with Lance and you're talking, and then Lindsay gets a chance to talk, were there moments where you were like, oh, I didn't see that?
Yeah. There were, like I said, Lindsay, it's almost like what you were saying earlier, like your greatest strength can become not your greatest weakness, but how you said it. Like one of Lindsay's greatest strengths is she is a truth teller. Like there's no gray with her. It's black and white, and she's not afraid to say it. So most of the things that we talked about I already knew because she's already told me, but to Lance's point is like, but when you see it all, like you add a third person into there and they're writing it down there, like, oh yeah, all that's true at the same time. You know what I mean? Like it becomes such a great reality. But she was very helpful in helping me understand, because one of the other things too that you ask is like trying to get into an internal life script, and I think we did talk about that on here, and it was kind of this theme for that. My whole sabbatical was like that difference between vulnerability
and transparency,
and so like my life script was, I tell myself all the time, I don't need you, Well, there's no way I could have gotten to that kind of depth without Lindsay's insight, because I think I said something else first.
Yeah.
And then it's like, that's good, but let's kind of drill down into that. And then Lindsay spoke up and I was like, oh yeah, no, that's what it is. Lindsay made a comment. That's what it was. Lindsay made a comment. She's like, Jason, I just feel like you don't need me. And then when we got to that point, I was like, well, because I don't.
And that's gold for you, Lance.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're finally getting down to some of the core stuff, because often we're dealing in symptoms, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Manifestations of a problem. But when you can identify like that really core thing. And I remember sitting in the room with you and the power, especially when you can put it that concisely, like, yeah, the internal narrative that he carries, and usually it's rooted in your family of origin, is, yeah, I don't really need people. Well, that has huge implications.
Sure.
Right? In how he leads a staff, how he leads a church, how he does marriage. Like, and again, that's why it takes some time for us to dive into all of that. But I do think it's such a powerful thing. And like, I'll tell you, like my script, and I got it from my dad, who his highest of values was responsibility. So my internal script is work hard, achieve and succeed, and be reliable. And that's how you succeed. And that's how you get loved in life. And when I began to realize like that drives so much of what I do and decisions that I make, it just unlocked the opportunity for God to begin to do healing in my life.
When you did come back from your sabbatical, and I think it was when we went through the book Unhindered.
Yeah.
Was that when we were talking about the little T truths and the big T truths?
Which I also did on my sabbatical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so Jason comes back with, I'm transparent.
The blessing wrench.
Yeah.
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 I'm transparent, but I'm not vulnerable. These are the little T truths that I've been telling myself, the internal narratives. And I know several people on the staff, this was very awakening for us, because I had kind of dived a little bit into that internal narrative, but it wasn't until you came back and explained what these little T truths and the big T truths, the lies that you're believing, the truths you're not believing, that I was like, oh, this does go back to my family of origin. This does go back to everything that I thought was true and the lies that I've been believing.
Yeah. And I think a huge concept we're dancing around here is the idea of self-awareness. And I feel like, this one quote I use a lot, it's not original with me, but it goes like this: self-awareness is your best defense against self-deceit. And a lot of us live in self-deception because we aren't self-aware. And I've spent a lot of time thinking about this. And I think a lot of it has to do with how we have approached discipleship in the church. Growing up in a Baptist church, we were strong on scripture. We were big about winning people to Jesus. And so we were a heavy doing culture.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But I would describe my church's attempt to disciple me as mostly behavior modification. Just stop doing all the wrong things we call sin and start doing all the right things, right? Giving and serving and reading my Bible. But no one really began to talk about what are the internal broken places in you that God wants to heal as part of your discipleship. And so getting the chance to work with a lot of leaders across, a lot of different fields. I think for a lot of leaders, their big lid in their leadership, it's not their communication ability, it's not their strategic thinking, it's their lack of self-awareness. And that has become the lid. And everybody else sees it, right? But they don't see it.
That's interesting. We were talking last week about something that I saw online. It was a pastor talking about churches historically have done a great job of the believing part, the belonging part, the behaving part, but not in the becoming part.
So true. That's really well said.
So that's the focus of our discipleship pathway now, having defined disciples, having defined what a disciple at Revolution looks like, is who are you becoming?
Yeah. I think, by the way, this is very consistent with the teachings of Scripture. Like the Christian life is inside to outside, right? It always goes from the root that gets nourished and then the fruit comes. It goes from the invisible to the visible. It's why Solomon says in Proverbs chapter 4, above everything else you do, guard your heart because it informs and directs everything else that you're going to do externally. And so all of this talk about becoming and being and soul care, like it's very biblical to start with the heart and the soul and then let that begin to inform how we live externally.
Yeah, because no matter how you define what a leadership pipeline is, whether it's in church or in business or in communities, there's always that element, and I'll just speak from the language of church. There's leading others, there's leading leaders, there's leading churches, there's leading networks. And Pastor Jason is doing all of those, but it starts at one rung below all of them, which is leading self.
Yeah.
So how does somebody start there? Where do they begin?
With leading themselves? I can just tell you in my own journey, I had to sort of get to this moment where I took responsibility for my life, that nobody else is responsible for me, and that I have to own that. And I think in our particular culture where we, play the victim card and we want to blame shift and deflect, that the very first place to start is to go, hey, I'm not a victim. Like, in fact, part of the beauty of the gospel is that the chains of sin have been broken in my life. Hallelujah. And now I am free to actually live, the Christian life. And that 2 Peter 1, he says, everything you need for life and godliness, you already possess. So for me, part of it's like looking in the mirror and going, do I actually really believe that? Like I have every resource I need. And God has given me and equipped me so that I can actually start to lead myself. And so I think you got to put a stake in the ground and again, go, I'm ridiculously in charge of my life, and me and the Holy Spirit and in community, we can tackle just about anything. And so for me, the rest of it is just sort of shuffling the cards, but that to me is really the starting place, is owning it for yourself. And then we can talk specifically about rearranging your world, but let's get started with owning it.
From your experience, Jason, and I'm going to ask this personally also, is the battle of the internal dialogue, is the battle of the narrative that we've been speaking since our families of origin, is that an ongoing battle, or are there moments where you're like, okay, I got this?
Yes. You know what I mean? I don't think you ever, as someone said one time, I can't choose my temptations, but I can choose my response to them. So I think in the ways we're tempted and the ways we're shaped, so much of that has been decided by others in my life. And once it's formed, so like my particular temptations and my shaping and forming was done in my childhood by others. And there's an element to that is going to continue forever, until I have a new body, But there is a lot, to Lance's point, there's a lot of freedom along the way that you can start to experience when you become so aware of it and responsible for it. So it's still going to hear it, but it's not going to have the same authority, And like for me, to Lance's point earlier, so much of and I got saved as a teenager, I said this many times, but I went to my first counselor when I was 25, because that's when my son was born. And if you look back at my sermons in life, and I had preached a lot of sermons by 25, so much of my sermons were about my dad and what my dad did. And that's who I was. But when I became a dad at 25, that's when I was like, oh, this is on me now. Like, now my son is going to grow up and say that. I don't want him to say that about me. So it was at 25 when I started to grow, take responsibility for that. And when I did my life plan with Lance, he noticed that there was so much of this theme about my father, my heavenly father, my earthly father shaped me. So again, I won't outgrow that, in a sense of like those scripts. Like I still have that. Like I said this comment to Lindsay the other day. She said something to me, and she was kind of flabbergasted that I didn't think about it the way she did. Like, well, I'm not a woman, babe, But I made a comment to her. I said, babe, I just need you to remember my first thought about a subject is never going to be relational. I'm never going to think about it relationally, because I just don't. I think about a problem or think about an issue, and I'm never thinking about, because I don't need you. That's my script.
Sure.
I don't need you, so I'm not thinking about. I'm thinking about how to survive myself, and that's why I need her. So that script is still there, but once I realize it's still there, then I can think, okay, time out. I need to think about this relationally. I need to remain ridiculously in charge, and I'm a relational being.
Right.
I do need people, and again, that's what's so helpful. So that's definitely growing still. My awareness of that, my function in that. But I don't know if the script, I don't know how you would say that, but the script never leaves.
Yeah.
You just become more aware of it.
And my experience, and this I'm kind of reflecting on my own journey, is I think these internal narratives run so deeply in us, and they are our default way of looking at the world and relating to people and making decisions, that even though I think you begin to get healing and transformation, I feel like it's going to always be on my radar. Like I'm never going to get over it.
Yeah.
So, but a couple of things practically, because I have a feeling people watching this or listening to it will be going, yeah, what do I do with that? And so a couple of things is, I think one, once you're able to name it and like identify the internal script, I don't need people. Well, once you can begin to name it, you're on the road to being able to tame it. So I think articulating it and being able to declare it really does matter. And then,
go ahead.
Well, I just one other thought. So, Viktor Frankl, who is a survivor of the Holocaust, who wrote Man's Search for Meaning, he has this statement where he says, between stimulus and response, there is a space. And what it's saying is, you can't help it that those thoughts may show up. You can't help that the thoughts are going to climb in your vehicle with you, but you don't have to give it the steering wheel. And I think between the moment of the temptation or the stimulus, I actually can choose in that space to not give in or to not, walk in that.
Yeah.
Hollywood has been known to have only 5 scripts. Every movie, every TV show, every sitcom. Well, every sitcom just has 1 script.
Yeah.
But is it like that in our internal narratives? There's like 5 things that everybody generally talks about. I'll just be transparent and vulnerable. So mine has always been, for 64 years, it's never going to be enough. And then the lie that I took from that, but I didn't know I was saying this to myself, I'm not enough. because it didn't matter what I did. It was just never enough. You did this, great. Well, how come you're not doing it like this person?
Mm-hmm.
So what I was telling myself was I'm not enough. And I've seen that play out as a self-fulfilling prophecy in my life.
Yeah, I would say often different language, but that theme of somehow not being enough shows up as probably the most predominant internal script that I, get to deal with. I was just with a guy maybe 4 or 5 months ago, and he's, shorter in stature, struggled with not being the athlete, and his internal narrative, the internal script was, I'm not man enough. But it's still got that enough word attached to it. So I would say, I don't know if I'd say there's just 4 or 5, but I would say the one you just described is probably the leading one that I see in the people that I work with.
You talked about some practical steps that people can take. So once you've named it, then you can begin to tame it. What does that look like?
Yeah, I think for me, it's like when I find myself in a situation and I begin to feel the insecurity. So one of my struggles is around people pleasing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of pastors deal with this.
Yeah, as David backs away from the microphone. Yeah.
And,
yep.
and so, and again, it's not unique to just people in ministry, but I think for me, when I find myself in that situation and I can either begin to feel that insecurity bubbling up, that I have this sort of internal dialogue, like I'm able to go, oh, I recognize that.
Mm-hmm.
That's people pleasing. And I get to decide right now whether or not I'm going to give into that. And so I've been really working hard on this concept of differentiation, which is a psychological term, but it's actually rooted in scripture. And I think you see it modeled in Jesus. But differentiation is simply to go, hey, I want to love you well, so I'm not going to stiff arm you. I do care about you and I want to be present with you, but I don't need something from you that's unhealthy. I don't need you to validate who I am by your words.
Yeah.
And so I can be okay whether I get that or not. And so for me, it's just been, kind of walking in that. And again, I feel like this is a journey. Like we don't arrive. It literally is day by day, moment by moment. I always tell people when you begin to lean into soul care, you won't see a difference between Tuesday and Wednesday, but you will see a difference between this year and 3 years from now.
Yeah, that's good.
And so you have to give yourself the permission that God's transformation often, especially in these deep areas, it is slow, and that's okay.
Yeah, and to that, are you going to do a different thought?
No.
Okay.
I don't have any thoughts.
Well, you know me. I think in alliteration, and apparently, just like the Holy Spirit told you on that flight, He downloaded to you in alliteration.
Yeah, very saddleback.
That's how.
I needed to
that's
hear
how. Yeah, not the language. But I was thinking about this, and I don't know if I've thought about it. I mean, I have thought about it, but it didn't tie together like this. That's why I didn't want to miss it. But when you said if you can name it, you can tame it. But I think the way that the way that the church tries to tame it is shame it.
Wow.
Like they just shame that. And so I think a lot of people, and even listening, they're maybe aware of it, but the tactic they have taken to tame it is just shame it. You should be better than this. You should have known better. And I think that's honestly, that's one of the biggest reasons why we're not vulnerable with people is because we tried it and that's what they did. They thought they were helping by shaming us with it. So I have to remind this to Lindsay often, and she'll do it with me of like for herself, like I'll say, babe, I'm like that. Like I didn't think relationally right now, but in that moment when I just was told her that I didn't think relationally, if she shames me for it, guess what? I'm not going to do again the next time is I'm not going to think relationally again, but now because I'm ashamed of it, so if I did, I'm not going to be honest, So I think those of us that love people and try to be differentiated, we've talked about that I love that word as well. Pete has helped so much with that. But it's like when somebody starts to become aware of these internal scripts and they're trying to tame it, we can't shame that. We can help shape it, but we can't shame it. Like, you should know better. And we do this to our kids all the time.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. So, well, tell me why that is. You know, like, seek to understand.
Yeah.
You know, and not just shame them.
Wow. That's speaking clearly.
Yeah.
Very loudly
So
right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm absolutely going to steal that.
Take it.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll give you credit.
Yes.
Maybe sometime.
The struggles going from it's not enough to I'm not enough to the people pleasing that you talked about. The people pleasing leads to fear of abandonment. They're always going to leave me, to what you just said about being shamed for the people pleasing instead of helping.
Yeah.
And identifying, hey, you know, why did you agree to do that for that person? What was your motivation in that? This is great, by the way.
Yeah, that's much more helpful than you shouldn't have it said that.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
that doesn't help us. All I know now is what I shouldn't have done or should have done. Or
and I think running in the background of this conversation is a lot of people's view, and I would even put myself there for a lot of my life, that their view of God is that he is sitting up there and his thoughts are shaming them and like, you should know better. And, you know, I just so often go back to in scripture when, you know, the times that Jesus hears the voice of the Father out of heaven.
Yeah.
It wasn't about what he should do. It was just like, hey, you're my son.
Yeah.
I'm so proud of you. I believe in you. And I remember years ago, regardless of what you think of the book or the movie, The Shack, I remember the moment when the person who plays the character of God is talking about the guy Mac who had lost his daughter, and he's kind of the central character of the plot. And the person who is playing God says, "I'm so fond of him." And I remember emotion just welling up in me because of all the things I think about God and what he thinks of me. The fact that God would be fond of me, like that just sits so powerfully and beautifully in my life, because growing up, I knew he was righteous and he was holy and he was big and he was majestic and he was sovereign, but that he would be fond of me, like that's a place that takes me to a very tender, sensitive kind of feeling, you know?
Wow. We'll let that sit for just a second. And, you know, spending 34 years in radio, especially morning radio, silence was never good.
Yeah.
But in the podcast world, sometimes you just got to let something sit. And if you're listening right now and it's affecting me, especially coming out of this season of Abide, of just wanting to sit with Jesus and really struggling with that for the first week of, no, I gotta read this John journal. I gotta get this done. I've got things to do. I've got meetings. I've got Zoom calls coming up, especially when it's icy.
Yeah.
Well, when I was thinking about like something I've been working on for a few years, because when I grew up in going to scripture and spending time with God, it was always like informational or practical. Like I wanted to grow in my knowledge of God. I wanted to get better at living the Christian life. And in recent years, I've been trying to approach even my time with God like more relationally. Like that when I pick up scripture, it's not just words on a page. Like, no, it's the only book in the world where the author is present every time I read it. And
that's good.
That I am actually spending time with my Father. And so that's been so helpful for me to reframe even how I spend time in the Word to make it more relational and less informational.
Yeah, that's really good.
Wow. And we were just in my office prior to this podcast talking about books, and I said, "Oh, you got to listen to this book from Annie Jacobson." I listened to, I think it was 17 hours of Annie Jacobson talking about nuclear war. And yes, I'm hearing her voice, but she's not present with me.
Right.
Yeah.
The Doug Fields book I talked about, no, with an exclamation point. He's not present with me.
Yeah.
I think the fondness that God has for us and the fact that every time you open up the Word, The author is present.
Yeah.
If we take that out of this season of Abide, wow.
Well, I was thinking too, and I know I've told you this, but we use a simple Bible study method called REAP. And so as part of the John Journal, read, examine, apply, pray. And partly because my brain just thinks acronyms and words, and, but I thought about that the moment you said that relational, I'm like, oh, actually that first R, read, we can add in our own, like read relationally. Yeah. Like there's another R there.
Yeah.
It's reap. like it's not just reading and examining, because you're so right. Like it's reading relationally. Like, and we did this,
Lindsay's going to hate you for that because we got to go back and change everything now.
No, we don't have to. We'll just talk about it. But again, like there's many different practices and disciplines. Like even when we would do the John Journal together, me, Lindsay, and my daughter, Natalie, read it. Like we would pray first. Hey, as we read this, Holy Spirit, help us. Yeah, like so it is a pausing before you even read it, asking for help. Be present with us, like that slowing down, like not this, all right, let's read it. You know what I mean? But yeah, you are present with us right now. And so we invite you to read this with us. And that's what makes that, obviously the Bible so powerful. It is alive.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So good.
Are there any questions that you have for Lance before we wrap up today's podcast?
Well, I get to ask him all the time.
The truth is, David, usually I'm asking him. So he's kind of reverse mentoring me. So I've given him everything I know. Now I'm trying to glean from him. So
no, I would say like not a question as much, and I've joked about this and Lance has heard me say this, but and this isn't, it'll make sense when I say it, but I know there are people out there that would say, man, I would love to have a mentor like Lance, but my joke is with my other pastor friends, like I pay Lance to be friends with me. Like, and I know that's not why he does it, obviously, 'cause that's not who he is. But my point is, if you want that, you do have to prioritize that, and it is going to cost you something. And so I tell my pastor friends, you can have this if you want it. Like you just got to want it and you got to make a sacrifice for it, And so that is like part of what, I think prioritize, whether it's a rule of life or whatever it is. Yeah, you're in charge. You can do it. But part of the reason why, and Lance was like, hey, we've done this now, for a couple years. He's like, hey, do you want to continue, this relationship? And absolutely, yes. And I'm going to keep paying you because if I don't, I won't actually show up and do it. Like I have to have skin in the game for it. And obviously he would be my friend regardless. But my point is, it's like, but it means that much to me. And I want to prioritize that relationship. And because I don't want to function or know how I would function without someone 20 years older than me. You've done this. I'm basically paying you to ask me these questions. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, I think a really simple analogy that everyone will understand is like, you can go to the gym and you can get on YouTube and you can figure out your own workout routine. But a lot of people pay a personal trainer and they are in proximity. You show up at the gym and they're literally right there beside you, and they've got a little more experience and they've been at this a little bit longer, and they're not doing it for you, but they're coaching you along the way, helping you so that you maximize the effort. And yeah, it costs something, but you go, man, look at the results. And could I have gotten there by myself? Maybe. But the truth is most of us won't. And so we need somebody, like a lot of our conversations. It's not anything profound that I'm giving Jason. A lot of times it's us just following up on, hey, last time we talked about this, did you take any ground this last month? Did you make some progress in taking some ground this last month. So to me, it's a lot like what you get with the personal trainer, but without the gym shorts.
Yeah.
Excellent analogy and a visual that I don't want to see. One of the things that Jason shared with our leadership team last week, and the excitement in his voice and the way his facial expression was just joy. And he goes, I just have these friends like Lance. I just want you all to meet him. Yeah. I want you to spend time with Lance.
Yeah.
And that speaks volumes for this relationship, that it's not transactional. It is highly relational. And I've known you now for less than 24 hours, and you have become one of my favorite people.
Thank you. Yeah.
So
very kind.
Thank you for, again, pouring into our pastor, because we are the recipients of that gift. And thank you for coming to Revolution. Thank you for speaking to our men. Thank you for speaking on this podcast today. Do people have access to you that are listening, that are like
limited? Learning that no. At this season
Doug Fields has a book.
Yes.
Yes.
In this season of my life, I am, one of the regrets I have has to do with my kids and kind of not always being as present for them. So one of the declarations in my life manifesto is that I want to be an available father and grandfather, and spiritually invest in the lives of my kids and grandkids. And so I'm trying to do more of that. So I'm very cautious about what I say yes to, but anybody could email me. It's just lance@replenish.net. And I'm very prayerful about what I say yes to, but if someone is reaching out, I would love to connect with them. And if I can't help, maybe I can point them in the right direction or give them a good resource.
Which of your books would you encourage people to read first?
Oh man. I think if, for most people at Revolution Church, I would say probably Your One Life.
Yeah, I agree.
It's Own It, Live It, Love It, and is the tagline of it. And it's really, when I started to write this book, I thought, I want to write a book that I could, if I was going to sit down with my grandkids and talk to them about, after living 6 decades on this planet, how do you live well and steward well the one and only life you're ever going to have? What would I say to them? Mm. And so that book sort of contains a lot of my life lessons.
Okay. It's Lance Witt, and the name of that book is Your One Life, and you can buy that anywhere.
Anywhere books are sold.
Yes.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. That's what I figured you would say that,
yeah.
But that is, you'll see a lot of themes in there of things we talk about. And, but I think that's the one I would recommend, to people in our church because of that phrase right there. You only have one life.
Yeah.
And I don't know about anybody, but I don't want to spend that whole life blaming somebody else.
Amen.
I do want to make an impact. And one of my other mentors, Chip, who spoke at our church, has said, it's okay to want to make a difference, just not need to, I don't need to do everything God's called me to do, but I want to, I just need to be loved by Him. That's all I need, but that book in particular, I think helps put some skin to a lot of the things we've talked about and how to be in charge, how to, order your life in a way that, when you get to the end of it, you're like, yeah, that was my one life and I lived it well.
Can I just tell you one quick thing?
Yeah.
So my dad passed away about 3 years ago and he was 85. And so at the time I started thinking what if I lived to be 85? And, how many more years would I have left? How many more Thanksgivings? How many more weeks? And so I found this little app called Life Clock, and you can put in your current age and then maybe when you might pass from this life. So I put in 85. And when I looked at how many years I had, and especially how many months and weeks I had, it was whoa, I've got still a lot of time on the clock. But then at the bottom of the app, it has this circle and it's like liquid filling it. And it fills based on your life, how much of your life you've lived up to this point. And mine was 76%. And I was like,
wow.
Oh my gosh, like I'm in the fourth quarter. I'm closer to the end than I would want to realize. But it was like, for me, I live with this constant thing in my life, like the clock is ticking. And I want to make sure that I'm doing, like, I don't get a second, I don't get a do-over, I don't get a mulligan. There's no, reincarnation. Like, I get one shot at this one life, and I want to do it well.
We're in our gun lap, as Robert Wogelmuth, just passed away, would have said.
And that's how you say his name correctly?
Wogelmuth?
That's not a Philly way of saying it. that's a name right there.
I'm pretty sure, because he married Nancy Lee DeMoss later in life, and she became Nancy Lee Wogelmuth, and I've heard her De Wogelmuth. Yeah.
We messed with him about his Philly accent.
Yeah.
That's why I was,
Yeah.
It's very sexy, I think.
I thank you. Thank you.
Don't encourage it.
You may be the only person who's ever said that, aside from Adrian.
Yeah.
Yes.
From Rocky.
Yes.
Yeah. I sent a text the other morning to the guys. I said, I am up. They give me grief about saying bury for blueberry.
Oh.
Instead of berry.
How would you say that?
Say blueberry.
Yes.
Blueberry. So I said, I said, I'm up very early.
Yeah.
URRLY.
Yeah.
So here are my takeaways from the things you have said. The Henry Cloud quote, ridiculously in charge of my life. That's profound. The internal dialogue, the internal narrative, name it, tame it, and then, Jason, you added shame it.
Don't shame it.
Don't shame it. Reading relationally. That was excellent. The author is present every time we open up scripture. And then finally, he is fond of me. That is so good. That is so good. I am rarely re-listening to podcasts that we do. But I'm going to listen to this one again.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here.
Well, that's why I was so excited for everybody to hear from my friend Lance.
Yes. Yep. This is a moment. We prefaced Lance with a couple of things we do on the podcast. So
we didn't say the purpose at the beginning. We got into 5 minutes of saying everything about him without saying his name, and then we didn't do the purpose.
We didn't?
No.
The purpose of the Grow People?
No.
Oh, wow. We even set you up for that.
We did.
Yes.
Yeah, so the purpose of this Grow People podcast was to help. So good.
He's a natural.
Yes. We have a team of people working on this show. And
really?
Yes.
Impressive.
We have a staff. We have hired and fired, I don't know, about 100 different people that have worked on this particular podcast. I don't know.
We'd let him go.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
We did. We had to. Yeah, they didn't get any laughs. I don't know how many people work on the Joe Rogan podcast, but we have many. Now, some of them are actually on our staff. So our producer is Brian Damerow. He is our production minister.
And he's a real person.
He is a real person. Our video technician is the king, Keon Sadiji.
The king.
Yeah.
Keon.
You're going to...
he's going to Kenya with us.
Yeah. He's excited. Yeah. He came up to me last night. He goes, hey, when you got your yellow fever shot, did they warn you that you could die? It's like, yeah,
it's not funny.
But because I was over 60 when I got it.
Yeah.
But he's fine. But I haven't heard from him today.
Yes.
So I don't know. Our key grip is Jakub Puszczakowski.
We're very international here.
Also a real name.
Yeah.
No,
he's from Poland.
Yep.
Whoa.
And his wife also works here. Her name is Jenna Puszczakowska.
Yeah, because the masculine, feminine, their names.
Yep. Our film director, who you met, is Marcos
Guardiola.
Now, our head of doctrine is theologian. Her name is Theologian. Okay. Our chief evangelist is Salvation. Our backsliding prevention officer is Lukewarm.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Lukewarm. Our director of Swedish witnessing, because we're big in Sweden.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. His name is Bjorn again.
That's my favorite.
Fun.
That's my favorite.
Thank you. Our expert on Russian eschatology is Pitov Hell. That's my favorite. My favorite. Our director of holiness is mortification. Our staff counselor is Les Moody.
Yeah.
Yeah. Our giving coordinator is generosity. We have a nativity coordinator. She only works in December. She's from France. Her name is Beth Lechem. Beth Lechem. She's French. Our co-pastors of plagues are Manny Locusts and Lance Boyles.
Oh,
yeah.
I love.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really appreciate you dragging my name into that.
We have a sabbatical director. We hired him when Pastor Jason was on a sabbatical. Trip Long. Trip Long is our sabbatical director. Our missional expert is Sam Area.
Oh.
Sam
Took
Area.
me a moment to get that one.
Yeah. Our strategist for the final battle. Her name is Irma Gedden. Irma Gedden. Our resident prayer warrior is Neil Down. Our executive director of spiritual warfare is D. Monick. We have a director of Old Testament covenants. He was knighted. His name is Sir Comsize. They can't all be gems. Our video technician in charge of instant replay is Slow Moses. Our director of New Testament baptism, and you were here for baptism weekend.
Spectacular.
Yeah. His name's Phil DeTub. That's his name, Phil DeTub.
Don't laugh at it.
Don't.
Yeah.
Our wardrobe is provided by Saul of Target. Our staff real estate expert is Simon the Zillow. Our catering is provided by the only Asian Jewish restaurant in town, Benny Hanukkah, and our new one. And I can't believe we have not come up with this guy yet.
Okay.
We just hired him. He went through the process. Our head farmer and dietitian.
Head farmer
and dietitian.
Okay.
His name is Daniel Fast.
Oh.
Danny Fast. Yeah.
You guys have too much time on your hands. I'm just saying.
That's just me. That's me. Lots of time on my hands, and imagine the ones that didn't make the list today. Yeah. So we always end the show with a thank you to our guest. So thank you so much. We love you because you love Jason. He loves you. So, and then Pastor Jason has a phrase that he likes to say at the end of every podcast.
The best. What did you say? The
best advice you could ever give.
Yeah. Trust God and take a nap. Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
Okay. Will you come back on the podcast?
Absolutely.
Will you come back to Canton, Georgia?
I would love to.
It's going to
make it a little warmer next time I come.
Yeah.
You're from Denver.
I know. But I expected I could stay home and be this cold. I don't go to Georgia.
Come back in July. You will long for January.
Yeah.
Probably true.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for listening. Grow People Podcast. You can share this with your friends. If you have not done the Abide cohort, it is all online, including the brand new Grow Women and Grow Men's curriculum, which is embedded in the formation groups.
Yes.
That's all for you. Thank you.
All right. See you next time.